Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video. We're going to look at experimental probability and we're going to illustrate the principles through this example on your screen. So if I roll a normal six-sided die 120 times, we're going to calculate how many times we would expect that we'd roll a number greater than 4. So let's first look at the probability that if I roll a die just once, I would get a number greater than 4. So hopefully you remember that probability is the maths of assigning to random events a number between and including 0 and 1 to indicate how likely they are to occur. So we take an event, we give it a number that's like a fraction or a decimal to tell us if it's likely or unlikely to occur. So the closer the probability is to 1, the more likely it is to occur. So we usually write like this, so we have P meaning probability, and then in brackets we put the event. So we're looking at the event, I roll a number greater than 4. So it's just the number of ways it can occur over the total number of outcomes. There are 2 ways that I can roll a number greater than 4. I can get a 5 or a 6 out of 6 outcomes in total, and of course 2 over 6 is 1/3. That is most definitely a number between 0 and 1. It's okay if you want to write it as a decimal, which would be 0.3 recurring, or as a percentage. It's all the same thing. So I'm going to use this one here. So if I roll just one die, the probability of rolling a number greater than 4 is equal to 1/3. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is I expect that 1/3 of the time that I do this, that I roll a die, I would get a number greater than 4. Note, greater than 4 doesn't include 4. So I expect 1 in 3 times I do this, I'll get a number that is greater than 4. So if I do it 120 times, I would expect that 1/3 of those 120 times would give me a number greater than 4. And of course, of just means times. So I just go 1/3 times 120, and of course that's 40. So I would expect if I roll a die 120 times, there would be 40 of those times where I roll a number greater than 4. So we call this number here that we calculated, the 1/3, we call that the theoretical probability, because that's in theory what should happen. In theory, I should get a number greater than 4 1/3 of the time. But of course, that's not necessarily what will happen. If I roll a dice 120 times, I might not get a number greater than 4 exactly 40 times. It could happen 41 times, could happen 39 times, it could happen 10 times. So theoretical probability deals with what should happen, and experimental probability is what actually happens. So let's say I actually did roll the die 120 times and got a number greater than 4 on only 20 of those 120 equations. So then the experimental probability is 1/6. That's just the number of times it did occur over the total number of trials. So the point here is experimental probability and theoretical probability need not be the same. Theoretical probability is what should happen. Experimental probability is what actually happens. So they can be different, and they often are different. So think about it like this. Let's say I tossed a coin 100 times. You would expect 50 heads, but it's unlikely that you would, in practice, actually get 100 heads. So the theoretical probability is the proportion of times that something should happen, and experimental probability is the proportion of times something actually happens. They don't need to be equal. So the last thing I just want to tell you is that the experimental probability is often called relative frequency. They are the same thing. So in the example down the bottom, it's right to say the experimental probability of rolling a number greater than 4 is 1/6. It's also right to say the relative frequency of rolling a number greater than 4 is 1/6. They are exactly the same thing. Well, that's really all there is to it. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.